What's up guys, welcome to another video on the channel. This time we talk about Max Payne. I wanted to see if it's just nostalgia that kind of gets me through the game, or if Max Payne was really ahead of its time and it's still worth playing today and still holds up. Remedy released Max Payne in 2001 and this is like 25 years ago. That's a quarter century. That's nuts. I was a kid back then and my uncle, who's a big video game nerd, kind of invited me over to introduce me to all these gaming franchises. You know, he was the type of guy that built his own PC and had all the nice hardware and the big sound system, and he had all the games. So dude, I was on board. Like, I was on board. And Max Payne was no exception. He introduced me to Max Payne when it launched and I played it. Is this good parenting? Probably not. Am I glad that some of the horrific scenes burned itself into my brain for better or for worse? Yeah, I think so. I was 11 years old back then, which is kind of troubling now that I replayed the whole game, and trust me, this game is certainly not for kids. But the nostalgia hit I got from playing this was unreal. I still remember the first scenes of Max Payne. I even remember the surround sound system my uncle has set up, way too loud and with way too much bass. Funny enough, he always told me how his ears got worse and worse over the years, and yeah, sorry, but I'm not surprised at all. While playing, weirdly enough, I also remember the mouse I played this game with, how it felt, how heavy it was. I'm not fully able to recall which brand it was, but it's like I can feel it in my hand still. Nostalgia is really a powerful thing. I'm not crying, you cry. Another thing that etched itself into my brain is the facial expression of Max himself. And seeing it again still impressed me. Max Payne was very well received when it launched. I mean, we got 3 entries in the series and the movie adaptation with Mark Wahlberg after all. Whether this movie is good or not is something that you can decide for yourself. I mean, I like Mark Wahlberg, but I leave it at that, and that's probably for the better. For me personally though, this game was a gateway drug and developed my love and appreciation for Remedy Entertainment. Sure, it took some time to make the connection all those years later that Max Payne was from the same studio like all the other games that I enjoy so much playing. Remedy's awesome. They made stuff like Control, they made stuff like Quantum Break or Alan Wake. And honestly, those are probably one of my favorite games ever. Like, I replay Alan Wake regularly. I played through Quantum Break and enjoyed every second, and Control is phenomenal. I will forever play every Remedy game that comes out, even though it might fail, like Firebreak did, but at least I tried it because I love Remedy so much. But hey, let's talk about what Max Payne is, shall we? And before we talk gameplay, let's start maybe with the weakest part in my opinion, and that's the story. And what can I say? I mean, it didn't rock my socks off, but it got the job done as a backdrop for all the crazy action. It's a classic noir, cop loses family revenge story with a sprinkle of government-scale conspiracy thrown in. Even though the game is super old at this point, I don't want to spoil it, so I leave it at that. It's told through monologue sequences in-game and through graphic novel pieces that almost look like a Sin City comic. Probably budget restriction, but I don't mind it at all. As I said, it gets the job done. The voice actor does a good job sounding like a badass, and the delivery is fine for the most part, but the writing is bare-bone at best and sometimes edgy for the sake of being edgy.
Agniti would be moving fast. I don't know about angels, but it's fear that gives men wings.
Or in other words, it has some serious B-movie quality to it. Just know what you get into here. What I really appreciated though was the end of the game, which I also don't spoil, but I thought it was a really fun sequence and quite satisfying. And with that out of the way, let's move to the things that make Max Payne an outstanding action game. I think the most standout feature in Max Payne, next to the amazing graphics, for the time that is, which we talk about in a bit, is the bullet time. As I mentioned, Max Payne came out in 2001, which is just 2 years after The Matrix, and as everyone knows, this movie kind of made the bullet time famous.
You're breathtaking!
I know it might be considered old right now, but we all dodged those bullets when we were back at school, right? Right? Remedy started working on the game in '97 though, so I think the inspiration was rather John Woo films than Matrix itself, but those movies inspired Matrix as well, so we're going full circle here. Over here in the West, The Matrix was the movie that made the slow-mo, bullet time, gunslinging stuff popular, so this was a perfect marketing opportunity for Remedy. And I have to say, even after all these years, the bullet time mechanic is pretty damn solid and fun to play around with. The cool thing about it is the fact that the game actually renders every single bullet, which adds a learning curve to the whole mechanic. There's no hit scan, so it's not just click bullet time and then click heads. You need to anticipate the bullet trajectory and lead the shots. This takes some time to get used to, but once it clicks, it's incredible what you can do and how cool it looks. There are even separate key bindings for the different bullet time moves, like just activating it or bullet dodging, which makes it so that Max is jumping in a direction in slow motion and you can fire while in the air. It's super fun and not just a gimmick, mind you. The game is pretty tough, downright bullshit sometimes, which we get into later, but more often than not you are swamped with enemies.
No, I told them not to.
If you don't know how to use the bullet time correctly, you will have a hard time. I personally love this. It's not just a mechanic for fun, it's something that adds skill, expression and mastery, something that modern games oftentimes neglect. Pause. I forgot to mention there's an indie game out there that is built on that slow-mo mechanic that is called El Paso Elsewhere. Just wanted to shout that out and highlight that the mechanic alone leads to someone making a whole game around it. And it's pretty good. Okay, let's get on with the video. Another thing that stood out for me was the presentation and the awesome vibe of the game. I still remembered glimpses of it, but experiencing it after all this time was pure magic for me. It's the perfect time of the year too, since Max Payne takes place in a New York during wintertime and you got all this dark, snowy urban city vibe. Perfect time to play it around Christmas if you ask me. And honestly, that's the reason I wanted to replay it in the first place. Everything feels moody and cold, and mixed with the gory and explosive action, it really hit me just right, and I came back for more until I was finished with the game. The sound effects are punchy, the weapons feel satisfying, and the soundtrack is pretty good too. It fits the theme and the atmosphere, and yeah, overall, a very sound package. Pun intended. I even found the Buffy Easter egg at one point I was loving so hard. I mean, I grew up on that shit, and finding a vampire in this game was kind of ridiculous.
There's blood.
I didn't want to know what had happened here. It was not a pretty sight.
Wait, is this an Easter egg? Should this be Buffy? Is this an Easter egg?
The graphics hold up tremendously well too, in my opinion. They use the technique where they put real life face images on the character models, and it was really impressive back then, and I think it looks super cool today. Especially seeing Sam Lake as Max's face. When I played it all these years back, I didn't even know who Sam Lake was, but replaying it now, it was even cooler with all this context. The environments look stunning too, with some nice texture work, but what stands out for me most is the interactivity of it all. It's very reminiscent of the old build engine games like Duke Nukem 3D, where you can interact with all the things. You know, like opening drawers and, you know, flushing the toilet, opening the faucets.
Dude, look at that.
Awesome!
AAA games. See that?
Take whatever steps necessary. Here stated that balance your
It's not on the same level as Duke Nukem, mind you, but it still makes everything really fun to explore, and I also used it for some of the puzzles too. Unfortunately, running this game is not as straightforward as I thought. I don't want to shit on an old game, but getting this to work on my modern system was a pain in the ass. See, this game gets a hell of a lot of problems when running above 60 FPS. The game crashes frequently, Max is stuck on invisible terrain, some in-game cutscenes bug out completely, or some tight jumps become almost impossible. This is tied to how the engine is coded and is a common problem from games from that era. Installing some patches and some workarounds later, it was working most of the time, but there were still some levels that annoyed the ever-living shit out of me. I'm so glad Remedy's working on a remake because this is infuriating and I see a lot of people drop off because they just can't get the game to work. But even with all the constant crashes and small bugs, I was still playing through the whole thing. I think that speaks for something, right? So the story is okay, the graphics are very good, the presentation is stellar, and the bullet time was a really cool feature back then. So all that's left to talk about is the gameplay itself. And this is where this game and games from that era shined the most, I think. Back then it was gameplay over everything else more often than not, and even though Max Payne tried to also deliver an intriguing plot to push you through, the game fucking slaps in the gameplay department. The loop is rather simple though. You arrive at your location, you traverse the rather linear level, and you shoot bad guys. A lot of them. The level sometimes opens up a little, like having multiple hallways or rooms that you can explore for additional resources like painkillers or ammo, but in the end it all converges back to one path. There might be an environmental puzzle along the way from time to time, like finding a switch to pull or shooting an explosive barrel to topple over a pillar and then jump on it to get to the next section. And sometimes you might get the in-game cutscene that triggers a scripted scene and then you have to shoot even more bad guys. In the end of a level you might even encounter a boss fight. It's a pretty simple shoot until dead but enemy is weirdly spongy boss fight that we all love. Right guys? But hey, they offer some climactic events throughout the game, so I'm not complaining. So as you can see, this game is rather simple from a 2026 perspective, but I have to say I kind of like this. You know, games these days always want it to be bigger with more complex systems and more to do, and I'm really like, I'm not getting through those games, so I enjoy a more linear action game, and Max Payne delivers just that, and it's impressive as hell. This was during a time where the level design was not streamlined to oblivion with yellow paint or yellow dots everywhere to make sure you exactly know what to do, and I really appreciate that. Sometimes you just need to think and experiment, and that's fine. What I had trouble appreciating though is the quote-unquote old schoolness of the encounter design, and that's despite of the fact that I grew up on that shit. Let me explain. So this game is something I would describe as an F5, F9 shooter. F5, F9 because you have to quick save and quick load constantly. Many shooters were designed like that in my childhood. The encounters are tough, the resources scarce, so you get yourself into the habit of quick saving if you manage to get through an encounter without wasting too much resources, or quick loading if you got your ass beat. Some of you who are not accustomed to that kind of gameplay might think that this is just another skill issue, and you're probably right, but those games are infamous for surprises they have in store for you, and sometimes you cannot even predict them, not even if you are the gamer.
It's probably this one.
Yo!
Yo, okay, yo, and you're dead.
Take it easy.
Max Payne in particular makes this abundantly clear. You get jumped out of nowhere from guys with shotguns and you're probably dead. A bunch of dudes swarm the room after a small in-game cutscene and you have to deal with them in very close quarters and you're probably dead. You turn a corner and a scripted grenade flies in your direction, which is one-shotting you by the way, or a dude with a grenade launcher just waits behind the next corner and then blows himself up alongside you. You cannot even react, and the list goes on and on. So you hit F5 if you survived that encounter for whatever reason, or you hit F9 if you didn't and try to get through the encounter by knowing what's ahead of you. The better you get with the bullet time, the easier it gets. You know, if you really master the bullet time, you're basically invincible. And I think the game is kind of balanced around that fact. Also, and I might be mistaken, but I think I read that the game is scaling difficulty depending on how well you're doing. Let me know in the comments if I'm completely lost here or if there's some truth to it. And while you're down there and you enjoyed the video, you might wanna, you know, slap that like button as well. I appreciate it. And now let's wrap the whole thing up with my verdict. In the end, I was really impressed with the game, I'm not gonna lie. I pushed through it even though I encountered so many technical issues just because of the fun I had, and I think this is a tremendous sign of not just how good this game is, but even more so how good it was when it came out all those years back. Believe it or not, but my patience also suffered now that I'm older and I'm less willing to put up with technical issues like that than I was when I was a kid, obviously. But here I couldn't help myself but just boot it back up if it crashed or go through the hoops to install the patches to make it work. The vibe, the graphics and the gameplay are so good, and I think this will be my regular replay from now on during Christmas time. I love Remedy, and replaying Max Payne just reinforced that. It's fascinating to see this game with the eyes of someone who knows exactly what came after. It's such a special studio, and I'm so glad a new generation of gamers will experience this gem with a modern coat of paint once the remake is out. I seriously cannot wait. And from what I understand, the remake will combine both Max Payne 1 and 2 into one game completely remade for modern systems. How awesome is that? And Max Payne 2 for many is considered even better than the first game. Personally, I would have been fine with just remasters because I think the OGs still have a certain charm to them, but hey, I'm not complaining. With some effort and patches, and you find those resources everywhere, they're still playable. I think I will replay Max Payne 2 before the remake comes out and then experience it again in this completely new package. And after replaying the first game, I'm even more excited than before. So thank you Remedy for making such good games. Really, every single franchise I just love playing through, and Max Payne is something that goes way back and I still feel so strongly about it. It's really something special. And guys, thank you all for watching. If you made it all the way to the end of the showcase, thank you so much. It really means the world. May I kindly ask you to help the channel out by slow motion 360 no scoping the like button and maybe telling your friends about this very special place on the internet. Also, let me know in the comments if you have any experience with Max Payne and if you are as excited as I am for the remake. YouTube will suggest you another video over there, so go ahead and have some more fun, and until next time, reingehauen.